Welcome to Tent Talk, the podcast with Nancy McCready, where we talk about life under the big tent of God's presence and the provoking process of discipleship. Here we go.
As I continue to stay in this thought of what it means to attempt to articulate what God has put in you, done in you, what He's walking you into as you look into the future and you attempt to share it with others in a way that they could then also enter in, it can be one of the greatest struggles. You will feel like your IQ has plummeted, that your verbal skills are almost, null and void. Now later, after you've come through the struggle, people will say, oh, you were able to just articulate exactly what I was thinking, and it just has helped me so much. And you're thinking, Father, how did you do that? How did you bring that forward? But my friends, He does. That's why those words that I read from Oswald Chambers on the previous episode, and as I continue to allow the Father to sharpen me for the work that lies ahead, my friends. And I know that many of you are in that same place. You are seeking Him to go to your next assignments, next places, next levels, all of these things we talk about. But it simply means we're growing up, we're maturing in Him, and that which He's forming and fashioning Christ in us for is coming forward. And we're putting our hand, if you will, to the plow and not looking back. And we will go forward. Here at NMM, the Father has spoken with me to keep my doors open for the next 2 years for the nations to come in and out of my rented lodging. So I'll remind you, maybe go back and read the last 2-3 verses of the book of Acts, and you'll see what Paul was doing. And this is a part of what God has told me that I'm to get ready to do. It doesn't mean that I won't be traveling. We're already scheduling things. We have inaugural trips that are being planned even as I speak into 2025 and 2026 to go into new nations, new lands, new states in the US of A, all of that. And yet, I know that He's also told me that many are going to be coming right here through our simple office here, the ministry house of NMM. I love to call it the pub. It's a public house for the gathering of God's people, for laughter, for joy, for His presence, for eating, for being together, for training, equipping, so many things. But for all of that to unfold, I have to be able to articulate certain things. And so it's put me in the remembrance of former winepress seasons. If you'll remember, there was the quote from the December 15th Oswald Chambers entry that said, go through the winepress of God where the grapes are crushed. Right? Go through it with Him. In the Latin Vulgate, there is the scripture Song of Solomon 1:4 that says He took her into the winepress to put love in right order. My friends, what the winepress accomplishes, it's amazing and staggering and painful and intense, but I highly recommend it. I highly recommend going with Him, staying with Him. The opening line of that entry was, if you cannot express yourself on any subject, struggle until you can. I can't tell you the hours that I've been with the Lord, and that doesn't mean some high-level spiritual exercise. It means through the course of the day, through the course of weeks and months, as I would think with Him as I walked and worked and sat and slept and couldn't sleep and, all manner of things, and how He has brought me through. And only He could, only He was ever meant to know that I'm in another season like that right now. And as we're in our end of year giving campaign, one of the aspects of the goal that we have of 100 thousand US dollars. That's for new things, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. That part of that is the publishing of new books that will be used in the mentoring and discipling process as we redefine discipleship. I believe discipleship is sonship, and there are emerging sons in the nations who have been in the slow fire of his presence, who are coming forward like gold. Right? There is something he is doing, but it begins in that place with him when you're attempting to learn how to articulate any skill set that he is sharpening. Recently, I had someone speak to me that said, Nancy, you are not going to stop being a mentor, but the dimensions of you are about to expand. Now, I knew this, but again, someone else stepped forward to give me language from the Father that could help me understand, first and foremost, what he was doing in me, and then how that would be used in the lives of others that he is working in. And they said, you're about to become a bladesmith. You're about to sharpen people. And they went on to say many other things. And I was like, yes, Father. Because there's a struggle when you're used to walking with people as they are in deep discovery of what the Father is doing and what's happening between him and them. And there are skills that you must have to identify with him, to not try to fix everybody, to not try to explain everything, right? There's a time to be quiet. There's a time to speak, right? And so that is such a major, major part of real discipleship, because people are discovering him. They're hearing him. They're coming out of their infancies. They're coming out of their being enamored with ministry. They're coming out of inordinate affections. They're being delivered from childhood demons that have hidden down in things and have avoided detection. But great deliverance, my friends, in the most amazing ways is happening. And so as I am transitioning, not to stop much of the work that I've been doing, but now to sharpen others, to see that work reproduced in the nations, under the radar. We're not talking about being famous. We're not talking about all that. I don't need anybody to know who I am for what the Father is making happen, for it to happen, right? But whoa, the process, the shift within you, the enlarging of his life within you. So it put me in remembrance, since I'm about to write many books for the specific purpose of discipling. It put me in remembrance of the struggle that I was in when I wrote the first book, From Trauma to Trust. And I thought, this is never going to happen. I can't tell all of this. How do I tell it? Right? Because as you can tell, I'm a talker. I would rather, spend, 6 weeks teaching a series than try to write a 5-sentence paragraph. Can anybody feel my pain out there? It's like, just let me tell it. Just let me talk about it, right? And then you go to put pencil to paper, you put your fingers on the keyboard, and you're like, I'm an idiot. I don't know what to say. How do I take all of that and begin, right, to break it down in a way that it can be of help to others as they seek him? And because I'm in it again on a larger scale and in a different formatting, I'm not trying to tell my story per se, which I'm of the belief my story is our story, but it is in a different forming. And then just the sheer decisions to sit down and do it. As my brilliant husband would always say, Nancy, God cannot drive a parked car. I mean, how many of y'all know some of the most profound truths? You're like, okay, I get it. So you can go sit in your car and like, God, drive me. He's like, well, put it in drive. And how many of you know that you don't even have to hit the accelerator for there to be movement? It's by the sheer shifting of the gears, holy shift, by the literally just taking it out of park and moving it through reverse neutral drive. Don't even touch the accelerator, and the car will just slightly begin to move. Because the momentum of the shift itself put it in motion. And then as we put things in motion, then it can begin to pick up speed. And then you begin to have direction. Momentum is very important. So as I am encouraging you, now maybe it's not to write books, maybe it's not to speak in front of people, but wherever you're at in these last days of 2024, maybe you're listening to this in January of 2025, it's true no matter when you hear it. But we all must come into that place of not the struggle with God as much as it is the struggle before Him. Is, Father, I'm willing to look like however I need to look, sound however I need to sound, but Father, bring me forward. And this was a part of what He was doing in me when I wrote chapter 10 of my book. And I want to read some of this because I'm in remembrance of what it was like to attempt to give words to the profound season that I was in. And maybe some of you are in this season. I want you to be reminded of His goodness and of His forthrightness, and that He will deal with you as with a son, my friends. God doesn't deal with you according to your sin. He deals with you according to your sonship. And then He will deal with whatever the issue and the sin may be. But here is chapter 10, From Trauma to Trust. The mountain of me. Is the Father enough? Many gasp in alarm when they see me, but you take me in stride. Psalm 71:7. As I gripped the armrest with both hands, knuckles white, teeth clenched, and body rigid, I contemplated whether this would be the last day of my salvation, or maybe I would just invent another version of it to calm my conscience. I had flatlined in my soul and hovered on the brink of divorce, destruction, and depravity. I was fully cognizant that there were plenty of people to reassure me I had finally seen the light if I chose to walk away. With tears streaming down my face, I saw the choice before me, the oldest choice in the world. Me or God. With tears and snot flicking off my lips as I spoke out loud to Him, I confessed, I know you are supposed to be enough, but in this moment you are not. I feel nothing. I am painfully and agonizingly aware that there is nothing. I have nothing for you, for when, for anyone. There aren't enough candles to light or soft music to play. It is all dead. Nothing can be resurrected. There was nothing fresh about it. It was stale and hard to the touch. God wasn't cutting me any slack. Again, He whispered to me, you can leave me, but you won't leave me deceived. And He turned the light on really bright. And I saw a hand waving a large bell, and the bell was stuffed full of tissues. The longer I watched, the more forcefully the hand swung the bell from side to side. The more violent the swing became, the more the tissues dislodged and flew out from inside the bell. It looked like miniature parachutes falling from the sky. And God said to me, Nancy, that bell is you, and I am shaking you violently. Everything you ever used to stuff your life with is flying out of you. All your attempts at pain management, be it sin or ministry, are all failing you. The crushing reality that you are not in control, have never been in control, and will never be in control is terrorizing you right now. And what are you hearing, Nancy? Somewhat mesmerized by what I was witnessing, I said, "The clapper inside the bell is ringing louder and louder, more and more. It's almost deafening." He said, "Nancy, you have stuffed yourself over the years with things, people, accomplishments, victory, service, ministry, image, status, marriage, and none of that was meant to fill you. Your needs are so unmet, and you are growing more aware of them by the day. You see the lengths you're willing to go to, and you are ashamed at one moment, but in full-bore lust the next. You are seriously contemplating walking calmly away from me and your life in me. And you can do that. I will not stop you. I will not convince you to stay. But if you stay or leave, you have this reality to contend with forever. While you feel excruciatingly dry, dead, empty, and restless so deep in your soul, look again at what is true of you in your spirit." And as I did, the hand plunged the clanging bell powerfully into the most beautiful, radiant, pure water I had ever seen. The bell was still going from side to side. I intuitively knew this was because the need had not left, but now the bell was filled and flooded with pure water. He said to me, "That is my love for you, in you. You are saturated in my love. Yet you have been drinking from the filthiest of fountains, self-indulgent love. Your ravaging bitterness has made you open prey to the enemy of your soul. He causes you much torment. I love you, Nancy. Now you decide." The freedom God gives me frightens me. The light faded from the room as day gave way to night. My fingers relaxed, my jaw unclenched, and my body began to melt in the presence of the Lord. I had no inclination what the next days held for me, and for what seemed like hours I wandered in my empty house. People wanted to stop by, the phone kept ringing, yet I could not speak or reason because I was in the battle for my life. Would I acknowledge His right to rule over me? Would I freely yield my freedom into His hands? Could He do with me as He pleased? And what pleased Him at that moment? It pleased Him to show me the love He desired between the two of us, deep, abiding love. I didn't need the love of my husband or another human. I needed love Himself. I was about to say goodbye to self in a way I did not anticipate. I finally fell upon the couch and sank into its overstuffed pillows. With the indirect light from one lamp beaming across the room, I whispered, "I choose you. You are my life and love." As these words went into the melancholy atmosphere that still hung thick in the house, I became increasingly aware of another presence. Its whispers were vile, familiar, and foul. In a flash, I saw into the spirit realm and knew the childhood demon of my life was present. This demon upon my uncrucified flesh had me so disoriented, I had lost my direction. Confusion about my core identity had overtaken me. The holy anger that rose in me was startling but sure-footed. I was being shown a truth, a reality that would forever transform me, curing me of confusion of identity, source, purpose, and love. In great fervor, I took off my shoe and flung it across the room, and upon that shoe rode the words, "It's you. You have ridden me all my life. You came to me as a child and rode my back into desperation, and as a teenager to rebellion. And tonight you want to drive me to complete and total craziness." At this moment, it was forever made clear to me that the demon that tortured me in the night as a child was the same one I had almost embraced and kissed on the lips as a lifestyle as an adult. Not another demon from among the pack, but the exact same one that rode my dad was now trying to remain embedded in me. It wanted to cause me to fall away permanently into deception and the delusive glamour of sin. This demon had morphed over the years from a torturous foe to a rebellious teenager seeking out promiscuous sex, to a fully whoring life as a college co-ed, and on to a young schoolteacher and open drunk. Once I was saved, it hunkered down, avoiding the cross as it cloaked itself in the zeal of conversion and the selfish ambition of ministry. When those around me, husband, boss, pastor, did not appreciate my efforts, when the pain that was being freshly inflicted roared within me with searing intensity, it triggered what had been stored away years ago. Rotting pain that every fresh injury stirred up like rancid oil. It was so foul, but my thoughts focused on others on the habitual trail of bitter victimhood I had walked many times. But this night, the blazing mercy of God, speaking bold truth to me, was saving my life in real time. His piercing, unflinching truth was like runway lights bringing exposure to the landing strip that old and current bitterness was giving to this familiar demonic spirit. I screamed with all my might. You will not have me. You've tried to drive me crazy all my life. Leave me and never come back. I freely choose God, and whether I live or die, if he uses me or doesn't use me, I am his. Flood me, Jesus, Father, and Holy Spirit, and possess me all my days for yourself. It was a gripping realization that God was not enough for my flesh and soul. As my man whisperer, God, brought me closer and closer to the truth, it was not excitement that grew, but the imminent feelings of death to self. Here I was surrounded by an elite class of failures, Peter and Paul, who knew what it was to come to the end of their view of who God was and what he was all about. It was here that I realized every true saint and son was brought this way, the way of the cross. In very experiential terms, I was watching God show me again at fresh levels what had been working in me. Self. I thought it was me and fought it the best I knew how. With a self-amnesia once again exposed, it was dawning on me that something was working in me that was not of me. Its power to overtake the sincere, confident disciple and the religious fool was staggering. Like Peter, I could swear my allegiance in one breath and deny him in the next. Peter was my encouragement because he is proof you can have a revelation of who Jesus Christ is, but not have a revelation of self in its full capacity to deny him. The man whisperer spoke words from Jeremiah to me. For the Lord has ransomed Jacob and has redeemed him from the hand of him who was stronger than he. Jeremiah 31:11. He continued showing me what was necessary for my personal place of quiet and safety and for the future of my destiny in him and for him. If you return and give up this mistaken tone of distrust and despair, then I will give you again a settled place of quiet and safety, and you will be my minister. And if you separate the precious from the vile, cleansing your own heart from unworthy and unwarranted suspicions concerning God's faithfulness, you shall be my mouthpiece. Jeremiah 15:19, Amplified Classic. There was much sifting, shaking, and violent tearing that was necessary to separate the precious, spirit, from the vile, flesh and self. I was learning again, as Holy Spirit led me through my deep, personal, experiential way, that there was something in me that was not of me. As sure as a splinter in my finger doesn't make me a tree, this presence of sin and self was in me, but not of me. The innate fury of self toward the Father is staggering once brought to the surface. Here I found my anger, and was not just emotional, but generational. Here I found my anger was not just emotional, but generational, passed from the loins of Adam in the garden to me. This is not personal, but inherited. Its nature and violent hostility toward the Father was in full bloom. When Paul said there was no good thing in his flesh in Romans 7:18, he meant it. I don't know if I was ever as furious with the Father in my evil as I was in my good. Thank God he is confident and unshakable during my fits of self-love, self-glory, self. Though the mingling of perverse reasonings and others' decisions block out his goodness for periods of time, and I am convinced he is against me and not for me, that he is distant, not close, that he is cruel, not kind, he is indifferent, not engaged, I am always then brought back to the truth. The sequestered truth is that he is working on my behalf. There is no greater servant than God himself. He serves his, not my, desires and plan for me. The dream he is bringing to pass is his, not the one I dreamed on my bed of abuse. When I was not seeking him, he sent his Son. When I resisted him, he remained steadfast and loyal. His loyalty is unexplainable. When the scales finally fell from my eyes, I cried along with all my brothers in the ages past. My God, what have I done? How could I have been so blind? As I faltered about, to weep bitterly beyond my own courtyard, when I heard the cock crow and realized my absolute denial of Jesus and my self-determined distance from him, I cried with a guttural awareness that this defection was not fueled by pity, but by pride. In all things, he was bringing me back to himself, for he was the mark I had missed in my sin. It wasn't just that I had failed to behave. I had failed to depend. At the cross, where I first saw the light, and the burden of my heart rolled away. It was there by faith I received my sight. Now I am trusting all the way. To revisit, my friends, that chapter, not only what that massive deliverance from self was like, but to remember what it was like attempting to verbalize it, to write it, to pass it on to others. You see, what I was describing as I read that occurred in February of 1996, almost 30 years ago. But my friends, the church is in this right now. This book, I believe, was published in 2021. My friends, I knew that this book was, when it was published, that it was for a future time, and I believe it is for now. And I am encouraged even by picking it up, because seldom do I pick it up and read my own book. I pray that others are. I pray that you would. Maybe you have someone in your life that needs to read From Trauma to Trust. But my friends, I'm encouraging myself by rereading it today, and pray that I'm encouraging you, because now it's time to write again. Now it's time to speak again. Now it's time to train up and equip and go forward, my friends. The hour that we are in is crying out for the true sons to step forward. Wherever you're at in your maturing and in your process and in your growing up, my friends, take that next step. Enter into the winepress with him. Let him do in you and for you what you were never meant to do for yourself. And my friends, when you go in there with him, it will absolutely cancel out anything that has ever been done to you by anyone else or by your own hand. Oh, my friends, I pray you'll think upon these things, and that we will continue to let him sharpen us. Give him permission to sharpen you. Those questions that were in that chapter. Would I yield my right to myself to him? I'm saying yes again, a fresh yes to him today. How about you? I love you all. Hey, before you go, please consider an end-of-year giving contribution to Nancy McCready Ministries. Yes, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, so yes, it will be tax deductible. So we want to encourage all of you that are looking for good, strong, clean places and people to be able to sow into. We want to ask you to consider Nancy McCready Ministries, 501c3 nonprofit, for your end-of-year giving before midnight on December 31st. It is certainly our desire that then you would continue as a monthly recurring partner with us as we shift into 2025. Look for the giving link in the show notes, and I will thank you now in advance for your giving, for partnering with us, and for being here on Tent Talk. Love you all.